Yeah, this toad has just started jumping towards my door, so I'm like looking at it like... Hey besties, welcome back to Besties and Books. I'm Ellen and this is Sarah, and we are so excited to dive into the world of fantasy and fantasy romance with you.
Which brings us to this week's episode. Today we will be diving into the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. You may know this series better by the name of its first book, Fourth Wing, one of our all-time favorites. We love this series because it has a little bit of everything. There's danger, intrigue, enemies to lovers romance, dragons with personality, a compelling female lead, and of course some entertaining side characters, and finally a unique world with dragon-based magic system. Who doesn't love that? To book one, Fourth Wing is set in a kingdom called Navarre, where students have to select to join one of 4 training quadrants. We have infantry, healer, scribe, and dragon rider. We're going to follow the story of Violet Sorrengail as she braves the riders quadrant at Basgiath War College, where her goal is essentially A, to survive, and B, to bond with a dragon. As we work through chapter by chapter, we're going to be uncovering themes such as survival and strength, resilience and intelligence, and friendship and support, and we're going to have a great time doing it. So today we will just cover chapters 1 through to 10. Please note this episode will contain spoilers, so if you have not read Fourth Wing, consider yourself warned.
Yes, and do you know what I love about this series too is that it's set in an academic setting. So as a big Harry Potter fan,
yes.
love an academic setting. Love it, love it, love it. Give me the War College, give me the Dragon Riders. Yeah. So let's get into chapter 1. So we'll do a quick summary and then we're going to talk about it. So in the opening chapter of Fourth Wing, Violet is basically forced to leave the scribe quadrant, which she's been trained her entire life to be in, and join the dangerous riders quadrant at Basgiath War College. So forced into it by her mother. At Basgiath War College, cadets train to become dragon riders and survival is pretty unlikely. Violet's journey becomes even more complicated when she meets Xaden, who's a cadet responsible for her brother's death and who shares a dark connection with her mother. So this sets the stage for a tense rivalry between her and Xaden, filled with danger. And in the first chapter too, we're introduced to Rhiannon, which she turns out to be one of Violet's. They build a budding friendship there. We also learn that Violet has a condition where her joints sprain and she breaks bones easily, and she's considered quite physically fragile.
Seemingly not ideal for the competitive, ruthless riders quadrant.
And in this chapter too, we learn that Violet's father and brother are dead. Xaden's father was the leader of the rebellion. So yeah, in this chapter we're introduced to Violet's mother and her sister. We learn a bit about the family dynamic. What were your first impressions of Violet?
First impressions, I would say I was probably underwhelmed, I guess. She's described as frail, small. Obviously, as Ellen discussed, there's some physical limitations with this condition that she has, which sort of limit some of the physical aspects of what she's going to have to face. Someone who's more comfortable with books than danger or mystery or intrigue. So we're sort of intrigued from the beginning, I guess, as to how she's going to go. Is she going to survive or just not?
So blunt. I remember like when we were first introduced to Violet too, my initial thought was, wow, we've got a main character that has a disability of somewhat, like the author is really bringing out the representation of that with a main female character, and I love that aspect of it.
And you can look back and see, I think in chapter 1 when she's carrying her bag, that she can literally not even pick up, but she's still determined to do it. So even though there is that frail, weak element, there's obviously a strength of mind there that we hope will come out more in the book.
Yeah, totally. So let's jump into chapter 2.
All right. So in this chapter, Violet faces a deadly challenge called the parapet. So all aspiring dragon riders must cross a narrow bridge high up in the air. To accomplish this task is to prove their courage and worthiness for the riders quadrant, and to fail means basically certain death. So on the parapet, things take a dangerous turn when a fellow cadet named Jack Barlow intentionally tries to throw Violet off the parapet. She narrowly escapes a fatal fall using some quick thinking and agility, proving her resourcefulness. Jack, however, isn't finished, and he continues to taunt and threaten her across the entire parapet, gaining ground as she makes her way towards the end. So reaching the end, she actually turns around, pulls out a dagger and holds it against Jack's balls. I mean, the girl, like, she's got balls, right? Like, she has definitely made a rival, but she's got balls. So
yeah, God is this fragile initial perception of Violet, hey? And
yeah, chapter 2, it quickly shifts, doesn't it? So Violet is welcome to Basgiath War College, where we sort of get a sense that the real danger is about to begin, and she's going to have to adapt quickly or become another casualty. I guess, as you sort of intimated earlier, Ellen, what have we seen already between chapter 1 and 2 in terms of Violet's, her personality traits and her characteristics?
Yeah, well, she's gone from this like fragile human, right, to then she's showing this like inner strength and this determination. And in the first chapter too, Mira warns her, she's like, don't make any friends when you go into Basgiath War College. You just make alliances to try and get to the end. But she's already making this friendship with Rhiannon. She's already looking out for others. R.I.P. Dylan, by the way. That scene was brutal when he fell off the parapet. I was like so sad after he was saying that, it's bad luck to propose to your girlfriend until graduation. And then it's just like, bye, R.I.P. But we've really seen Violet progress and already show this real determination. Like, I'm here now, I'm going to be a dragon rider, and I will not be taken advantage of. She's a badass.
Yeah, and she's showing compassion too. She gives her boot to a complete random so she can hopefully survive, so they can both survive. So compassion and loyalty to a new friend / ally, strength of character.
Yeah, totally. And when we were first introduced to Jack too, I was like, what a dick.
You wake up in bed, like you are determined to just kill anyone you can get your hands on.
He was just horrible. I was just like, who is this asshole? But like the tension that created when she was crossing the parapet and Jack was like chasing after her with these taunts, and then you hear him throwing off another kid off the parapet just cause, like, it was all sorry.
Just so matter of fact.
This toad has just started jumping towards my door, so I'm like looking at it like yeah, I just thought it just created all this tension, and I was really nervous about where this was going to go with how Jack was behaving and reacting.
All right, on to chapter 3.
So in chapter 3, Violet reunites with her childhood friend Dane. He's now a second-year cadet, and he's struck by how much he's changed. He's not just the boy she once knew from childhood, but someone she feels an undeniable spark with. Their reunion is filled with nostalgia and new feelings, but meanwhile, Violet also meets Xaden, the most exquisite man she's ever seen. He's a talented and ruthless dragon rider who harbours a deep hatred for her due to her mother's role in his father's execution. So the tension between them is palpable, and as Violet faces dragons for the first time, the deadly nature of the world becomes clear. So already in this chapter, she's reunited with her childhood friend Dane. He's already wanting to protect her, saying, why are you doing here? You should have been in the scribe quadrant. What are you doing in the riders quadrant? He already is trying to figure out ways to get her back to the scribes, and even goes to the point of suggesting that she might even be less than other cadets and that she'll be sensed by the dragons, and implying she'll be killed straight off the bat. In this chapter 2, Mira warns Violet to stay away from Xaden or to risk her own death. But there's obviously something undeniably magnetic about them. What was your first impression of Dane's reunion with Violet?
Oh, just get out of the way. I'm not interested in this, like, childhood friend, really.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if anyone actually reads this chapter and thinks, oh, this is nice, they're gonna start a budding romance, when meanwhile Mr. Hot Guy, mysterious, ruthless, around the corner guy is there. I mean, I was just like, I think I was a bit bored by him, actually, especially after, as we go on, he becomes more and more boring. But first impressions was like, nah, let's get back to the dragons and Xaden and Rhiannon even.
Yeah,
Poor
totally.
Dane.
Do you know what? You said no, probably no. You said probably no one read this chapter and thought, oh, he was hot. But this was the first book that I read getting back into fantasy. So for me, I thought he was the love interest straight away. And I was like, who is this handsome, attractive childhood friend? There's a bit of tension there. Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't pick up on Xaden being the most exquisite man Violet has ever seen. So
what if you read it now? Do you think you would have other ideas?
I still feel like there's a bit of tension in the beginning, but then I got annoyed when Dane was trying to get her back into the scribes. And I remember being annoyed the first time that I read it because she was like there, she'd already crossed the parapet, she'd beat the statistics despite all odds, even with, one slippery boot and one boot with grip. Like, she really smashed it. And then for Dane to be like, you need to go back to the scribes, and not even hearing from her. And he's pretty condescending. I think he says something like, oh, have you wrapped your knee? Have you done this? Have you done that? Do you even know what it's like? You're going to meet a dragon.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mother hen. No one wants that.
Let's move into chapter 4.
All right. So chapter 4, cadets are settling into the War College. So Violet's training is intensifying as she faces grueling physical challenges and combat lessons in a cutthroat environment where literally only the strongest survive. Every day she's faced with the brutal reality that her body is more fragile than others, and she struggles to keep up with her peers. Dane, as we've sort of discussed and we'll discuss again, he remains this overprotective, initially sort of this cute, nice overprotective, but it becomes a little bit overbearing when he's just constantly doubting her abilities every step of the way. Meanwhile, Xaden, who we sort of all think wants her dead, is watching her very closely, and Violet is feeling a little bit of a dangerous threat vibe coming from him. Violet also learns that Dane has the power to read memories through touch. It's his signet power, which we'll go into more in future chapters. And she then also learns that her squad was moved into 4th Wing to be under Xaden's command, and that was actually at Xaden's request.
I remember when I first read that, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I was a bit like,
good.
I think this is going to end up well, but I think there's a bit of like rocky patches until we get to the good part. So now Violet's heard it from not only Mira but Dane that Xaden has openly, or it's common knowledge, that he wants her dead. So there's sort of this danger and intrigue and mystery around, I guess, their relationship. We meet a few other cadets. We meet a guy called Sawyer, who is actually repeating his first year because he didn't manage to bond with a dragon last year, so he's decided to come back all over again and start from day one. I mean, ouch, that's got to be hard for morale, but anyway, here he is. We also learn that Xaden's dragon, who I think we will pronounce Sorrengail.
Yeah, Sorrengail, that's it.
Sorrengail is described as one of the most vicious dragons, so like dragon, like rider, I suppose. But chapter 4, so how do we feel about the dynamic at this point between Xaden and Violet?
I mean, the tension's palpable, right? Like, at this point, she's been warned by her sister not to go anywhere near Xaden, that he'll try to kill her as soon as he figures out who she is. I mean, before she even crosses the parapet, he works out that she's a Sorrengail. And then moving her squad, I guess, into his 4th Wing, it was like the tension and the angst. Oh, I remember how excited I was and how nervous I was for Violet as well. I thought it was great.
I do remember thinking at this point as well, we actually at this point have no evidence that he wants her dead. Like, she's heard it from Dane, she's heard it from Mira, and everyone just assumes that because of the tensions with the parents, and I mean, more than tensions, the execution of his father, and obviously her brother's death as well, I think everyone just assumes that he wants her dead, but nowhere in the text is there anything that Xaden at this point has said to her or implied that he does want to kill her. So there's that of doubt over the whole relationship too. We're not really sure. There's some danger there because he's clearly a ruthless guy, but we're not sure if that's going to be directed at her. yet.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. All right, let's move into chapter 5. So in chapter 5, Violet and the cadets dive into their very first battle brief. So battle brief is where you start to learn about the enemy politics, you strategize, and you really get a sense of the reality of war. Magical wards are used to protect the borders of Navarre, and they're being threatened by Gryphons. So in battle brief, we learn that the wards are failing and the danger is really growing. Jack Barlow also continues to taunt Violet and make death threats, and Violet nearly dies in a brutal match with Imogen, saved only by her armor. And Imogen, we learn, is part of, I guess, Xaden's group, friendship group. Her parents as well were rebels that were executed on the orders of Violet's mother. So she's also got a grudge against Violet. And Violet's armor protects her, and Mira, her beautiful sister, has actually sewn in dragon scales into her armor. So it's given Violet this bit of an edge when she's attacked. So amid all the chaos, Riddick is introduced, and he provides some real comic relief. And I love, in such a dark, brutal setting, we get a character that's just offering this comic relief, and he really continues to do that throughout the rest of the series.
But don't you always think it's hanging over his head like he's gonna die? Like, the comic one is always the one that just like gets his head bitten off or something.
Sarah, don't! I've seen so many, I guess, theories out there that are saying if Rebecca kills Riddick, it's going to be so like devastating. Yeah. Don't kill Riddick. So we also learned that riders can be called into service before graduation, highlighting how unpredictable and brutal Basgiath War College can be. In this chapter 2, we learn that the dragons are the one powering the wards that are protecting Navarre, and Violet shares her scribe knowledge with Rhiannon, building this budding friendship with her in exchange for training on the mat. So in this book, we also learn about gauntlets, sparring, threshing, all these tests that the students are put to before they can officially become dragon riders. So how does that, I guess, War College academic environment compared to other series that we've read, like Harry Potter? Maybe I'm going to get some comments from the big fangirls of Harry Potter out there being like, how dare you compare to Harry Potter to anything else? But this academic setting with all these tests and trials, what was your initial impressions of that? Because you've read Zodiac Academy too, and I know that that's more of an academic setting.
True, yep. Do you know what? When I read this book, it never once came to mind Harry Potter. And I know it did for you, because I remember you mentioning it a few times. I think because the worlds are so different, the witches and wizards in Harry Potter, and I also loved Harry Potter, I'm a huge fan. But I guess this one being a sort of the dragon base, I don't know, my brain just like didn't connect the two. Like, and then in terms of comparing the ruthless side of it, I found this book, especially if you're comparing to the first few books in Harry Potter. Like, I was reading Harry Potter when I was probably 12, and I'm not sure that I would be reading Fourth Wing when I was 12. I think just because the way, I mean, I sort of think of Harry Potter, there was often like one death at the end of a book, whereas this one, it's like parapet, you're dead. Gauntlet, you're dead. Like, challenge on the mat, you're dead. Like, just every morning they read the death roll call. And I did think at this point of the book, at some point, like, it's as ruthless now as it was in chapter 1. Like, I don't think it's gotten more or less ruthless, but at some point, are they going to start protecting their own, or do they actually not care? Are they just food for fodder? They're just happy to, sacrifice all of their cadets. So yeah, I would call this brutal. Zodiac Academy is also brutal in a different way. I found this more palatable than I found Zodiac Academy.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that another time.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, like, when it was first set up, the threshing and gauntlet, that why would they want to kill skilled potential dragon riders? That didn't make sense to me. I was like, surely the more numbers you have, the better. Like, why are you setting up cadets to be killing each other at any given moment? That was the part that I was like, oh, this seems didn't quite make a lot of sense to me. But
especially when they say at some point, I think the dragon riders are allowed to get married well before the other training quadrants, because their numbers get so depleted. So at some level they recognize we need more, yet they're just still happy to sort of sacrifice them as they go.
Yeah. And what were your initial impressions of Rhi and her friendship with Violet?
Oh, I love that. I think particularly because Mira at the beginning says, don't form friendships, form alliances. And the first thing Violet does is form a friendship. She doesn't, I don't think at this point she's thinking or caring at all about alliances. She's just seeing a girl who has slippery shoes on a parapet and is going to die. And then, you know, they sort of come to their mutual respect and reliance on each other for training and coaching in their educational sessions. So yeah, I think they will get each other through some tough times.
Yeah, and I think I really loved that Ree didn't just try and, like, as soon as she got across the parapet, didn't try and turn on Violet. She, like, was really open to a budding friendship there as well. I did consider that.
That would happen.
Yeah. Let's jump into chapter 6.
All right, so chapter 6. So Dane, the hero that he is, rushes to take Violet to the healers after her brutal encounter with Imogen on the mat. We learn that healers, while they can fix wounds, there's sort of a specialized healer called a mender that can actually use magic and manipulate the body to heal faster. And incidentally, Violet's deceased brother Brennan was actually a mender. Dane again tries to use Violet's injury as an excuse to push her out of the rider's quadrant and send her back to the scribes, which she strongly opposes. Again, the emotional tension in the chapter escalates as we learn more about the children of the rebellion leaders, and not only were they being punished, they were forced to watch their parents' executions, but they're all actually forced into the rider's quadrant. So they, unlike everyone else, they don't have a say in which of the 4 quadrants they want to join. Mira ends up leaving. We sort of never find out how it happens, but somehow she leaves for Violet their brother Brennan's journal, and it contains all sorts of valuable knowledge that is going to help Violet in her journey at the War College. Particularly, it contains details on how to find out who she will be facing next for the combat challenge. So that is obviously a crucial piece of information, and we'll see in the next couple of chapters what Violet does with that information.
I loved that little touch too, that it was like Brennan's her brother who had passed away, and Mira snuck in his like little personal journal. I loved that little touch.
I know, yeah, it was very cute. It was very sweet. So obviously we're hearing a bit more as we go along about the children of the rebellion and the sort of the forced conscription. Do we think, are we seeing any signs at this stage that Violet is sympathetic towards them, given her own, forced entry into the rider's quadrant?
I didn't get that impression at this point, because Imogen did just break her arm on the mat. It was a pretty brutal sort of scene, and that tension with Xaden there too, I'm pretty sure he was present for that, was palpable again. So I don't think she was sympathetic to the cause just yet. I think the hatred was still, pretty strong for, well, maybe it wasn't hatred, but she knew that the children of the rebels hated her, and so there was this sort of, she had this anger.
She's got to keep her
reciprocal anger. Yeah, totally.
I agree. I think we've seen Violet demonstrate so far compassion, but not towards the children of the rebellion, because as you said, her encounters have not been good at all.
No.
All right.
And how annoying was Dane in this chapter as well?
Oh, I know. That's why I just got to the point where I didn't even want to read his blab. I was just like, get over it, buddy. She's not leaving.
I remember thinking, like, this was the scene that made me realize Dane wasn't the main love interest. When she's like in the hospital getting her arm sort of mended, and he's begging Nolan, the mender, not to mend her arm so that she can use that as an excuse to get back into the scribes. He hasn't spoken to her about this. He hasn't consulted with her at all. He's just like, I know what's best for you. You don't belong here. You won't survive. You're too fragile. You need to go back to the scribes.
Yep.
Like, oh, I remember just like wanting to like strangle him. Like, she's proving again and again and again.
Move
like,
out of the way,
she's capable.
buddy.
Yeah. And what is it with this, like, I have the power to tell you what to do and you need to do it. Like, there's that real, sense of, I know what's best for you.
Like ownership and that grinds me. Which presumably Rebecca knows it grinds most people, so she's
Yeah.
trying to weed out the people that like Dane. This is not okay.
All right, let's move into chapter 7. So in chapter 7, Violet sneaks out to gather berries in the middle of the night, and she stumbles upon a forbidden meeting at the college. So at this point, Xaden is training the rebel kids for the upcoming brutal trials, and they're meeting in a group larger than 3, which we learn very early on that is just absolutely not on. It's, I think, punishable by execution. When she's overhearing Xaden in this meeting with the rebels, she just really learns how harsh and no nonsense Xaden's approach is. He is just brutal. He brings down this first year and is like, you know, if you're not going to try and help yourself, then you're going to die tomorrow. Like, get out. It's just like, he is savage.
Tough love.
And Violet ends up coming up in conversation between Xaden and the rebels towards the end of their little meeting. And Xaden's like, she's mine. And soon after this meeting, Xaden catches Violet eavesdropping, and tensions rise as he reveals his deadly shadow powers.
I'm so
well,
excited.
I know. I love a shadow daddy. Why does it sound so cringe when I say it out loud though? Whereas like when you read it, it's like the hottest thing ever. But when I say that out loud, it just doesn't sound sexy at all. And we also learn Violet proves her own lethal skills when she throws a dagger at Xaden. After a tense standoff, Violet agrees not to reveal anything about the meeting that Xaden has had with the rebels in exchange for a favour from Xaden, leaving a sense of mystery and tension in the air. So in this chapter 2, Xaden isn't trying to push Violet back into the scribe's quadrant. He isn't like, why are you here? What are you doing? He basically says, you've got some dagger skills. You need to be using them on Jack Barlow, who's her main threat at this point in time. And that's, you know, completely contrast to what Dane has been suggesting to Violet to lay low. What did you think of Xaden after his meeting with the rebels and how harsh he was?
I loved him. I had no problems with it at all. I was like, dude, you are going to die. Like, people's necks are getting snapped every day on the challenge mat because they can't face up to their opponent. So I think, like, you got to be ruthless. Like, you get them training and you get them training quick, and like, no whinging, no fuss. Like, they don't have a choice, or they will die. So yeah, I don't remember reading it thinking, ooh, that was harsh. I just was just like, yeah, you go. Love it. But I was very intrigued by the she's mine comment. And like secretly I was hoping, ooh, is this the start of like the tension between them? Is this the start of the romantic side of this tension? Or is there something else going on? And we're not really sure at this point. But,
yeah,
you know,
totally.
We can always dream.
And I think we could even say, like, this is probably the first sign that we learn that Violet is a bit sympathetic to the rebels, because she sort of learns, like, Xaden isn't this horrible person who's just trying to kill everybody. He's actually trying to help the children of the rebels to get through Basgiath War College, and that was the purpose of the meeting. So she's sort of, you get little hints of sympathy.
Yeah,
there.
and she says it to him. She says, "Why would I report you? You're clearly trying to help. Like,
yeah.
Why would I take that advantage away from these first years? Like, this place sucks. So
yeah,
any help is, you know, she's got her brother's journal to help her. If you've got someone to help you, your chances of survival are better, and all the power to you." Did you ever think she was at risk from him?
Yeah, I did.
Did you?
I did. But not after the meeting. That's when I started to getting like a bit.
So this was the turning
suspect.
point of their sort of something's going to happen.
Yeah. I wasn't naive anymore.
I saw the light.
Oh,
All right,
totally.
Chapter 8. So, with the berries that Violet gathered from her late night encounter when she came across Xaden, she volunteers for kitchen duty, and she cleverly poisons her opponents that she's going to face in a hand-to-hand combat, ensuring that they're a little bit sick, so they're not fighting at full strength, but they're still able to participate in the challenge. We dive further into the fascinating world of dragons, and we're introduced to the rarest and most intelligent black dragon, of which only 2 known black dragons are in existence. One is bonded and one is yet unbonded. We learned that when a dragon selects a rider, a powerful bond forms between the two of them, and that actually provides the rider with a unique power, which we call a signet power. Now, when that bond happens, we don't know what power or what power is going to manifest for that rider. It's sort of up to the unique combination of the rider and the dragon combined that determines what the power is going to be. Unfortunately, as always, there are serious consequences for using excessive power. So riders can either face a burnout or, in serious cases, death, where the rider's life force is fully drained from the use of their power. And then towards the end of the chapter, the most thrilling, suspenseful moment comes when Xaden steps in to face Violet in hand-to-hand combat, as her scheduled opponent fell ill and couldn't make it. So now we're sort of a couple of chapters in and we're in the thick of the story. What other developments have we seen from Violet from the beginning to now?
Oh, she's turning into a real badass. Like, I think I said this earlier, but she's just developing so much as a character. But she's open-minded, she's compassionate, she's friendly, but she's not naive. No one could call her stupid. No one could call her like having faith in people when she really shouldn't. She's really strong, she's really intelligent. And I have to say, this scene where Xaden steps into the sparring ring with her is one of my like all-time favorite chapters. Yeah. It was a real favorite. I remember just being like on the edge of my seat. I was totally gripped. The tension, the angst between them was just like, oh. But, you know, when he stepped into the ring, what was most impressive about Violet, she didn't back down. She didn't say, oh no, I can't do this. He's like way more advanced than me and experienced, and he's obviously far more skilled at that level. She didn't once back down. Dane's already like yelling out, don't you think that's a bit of a stretch? Like, because he's so experienced. And she doesn't back down. She's like, no, I'm stepping into this ring. Like, she's nervous, of course. Like, how could you not be? But yeah, she shows some real strength.
I think she's also happy to get her hands on him just a little bit. Right? Like, who wouldn't want to? Get onto the good stuff then. Chapter 9.
So the tension between Violet and Xaden intensifies as they spar, despite Dane's efforts to intervene. So the chemistry between them's undeniable at this point, and Violet can't help thinking about how attractive Xaden is. Sparks fly when Violet throws a dagger at Xaden, only for him to anticipate it and tease her with a new nickname, Violence. Oh! Love it!
Do you know, I actually hate that nickname.
No!
Yeah, I've never liked it. Anyway.
I love it. I absolutely love it, especially when Rebecca Yarros like explained that it was intentional because everyone thinks she's like delicate and fragile like a violet, and then shows this real strength, and that's sort of where she got the inspiration for the name from. Love it. So Xaden's figured out that Violet is poisoning her opponents, and although he's impressed by her brain, he challenges her to step up to her skills instead of relying on poison, because you can't poison your enemies on a battlefield. So the dragon and magic world expand as we learn about the Veil, which is the dragon hatching grounds, and the mind-to-mind communication between dragons and their riders. By the way, I love mind-to-mind talk. I don't like in any fantasy book, it's just like as soon as I hear you can talk mind to mind, and in this instance mind to mind with your dragons, I'm just like, oh, I love it.
I
love
agree.
it.
I don't know why. There's just something so like intimate about it.
Yes. So Violet at this point is getting really frustrated with Dane's insistence that she leaves the rider quadrant, which just leaves her more determined to prove herself as capable. So at this point, Violet has Xaden's rebellion meeting a secret. She's maintaining the secret for him, and when sparring, he implies that he'll keep her little poisoning secret as well. So at this point too, Violet's feeling this sort of like constant push and pull between Dane. He's her childhood friend, but he's being really condescending and really like, you need to go back to the scribe. He's being overprotective and concerned for the safety, and he's not on board with Xaden's brutal training style at all. So also in the scene, Xaden, he realizes Violet is poisoning her opponents like we said, but he's also impressed by her brain and wants her properly trained in combat. So how do you think the interactions between Xaden and Violet now have changed between the beginning of the book to now this sparring session?
Well, one of the things I love about this chapter is that Rebecca does the alternate chapter from Xaden's perspective. So by the end of the chapter, if we've read both the chapters, we've actually seen it from Violet's point of view and Xaden's point of view. And it's the first time we get a glimpse into what's going on in Xaden's mind. And we realize that there is a mutual attraction there. So up until now, we've known that Violet started off as being ruthless, stay away from him, but he's sort of compelling. And as time's gone on, she's, slowly changing her mind. And, every time she sees him, he just gets more and more attractive, more and more attractive. But this, for the first time, we realize that actually Xaden struggles to keep his hands off her. And I think he tends to avoid her because he's worried that he won't be able to keep his hands off her. So this is sort of, in my mind, it's a real turning point for the reader, because we suddenly go, oh my gosh, there is some mutual chemistry here. It's not just Violet constantly oohing and ahhing at Xaden. There's a bit of something's gonna happen soon.
Yeah, totally. I actually forgot about that. We get that Xaden's point of view at that point, and I remember thinking that as well. I was like, oh, the tension, the angst. I love it. And we obviously see here Violet's getting more and more frustrated with Dane. Do you think he's just trying to look out for her, or do you think he's really trying to take control and limit her development at this point?
I mean, I think both. I've never been team Dane, but I can accept that he's doing what he thinks is in her best interest. I accept that. But he's 100% limiting her potential. He's limiting her growth. By trying to push her out of the quadrant, he's trying to squash her down and not let her experience or learn or grow. And of course she's going to fail if she doesn't get the chance to try. So, God, he's a pain in the ass. I just
yeah.
And every second chapter, or every couple of chapters, he does something else that tries to tell her how she is not up to scratch. And then she just proves him wrong every step of the way.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Let's get into chapter 10.
Okay, chapter 10, the Gauntlet. So Violet and her squad, they prepare to face the deadly Gauntlet, which is a brutal obstacle course designed to stimulate real battle and the challenge of mounting a dragon at full speed. Slightly shorter than the rest of her squad, Violet really struggles with the final ascent in the Gauntlet. And then combined with that, tragedy strikes during one of the training sessions, and a fellow cadet orally forced to her death in front of Violet and the rest of the crew.
I was so sad about that.
And again, I didn't see it coming.
No.
Rebecca doesn't really prepare you for any of these deaths, and they just keep dropping out of the air. But again, it highlights the high stakes of the training and what the cadets have to live with every day. Violet she's deeply shaken by Aurelia's death and starts to despair about her own chances of surviving the real Gauntlet. As Xaden sees this, he sees how unsure she is that whether she'll overcome the odds against her, and he senses her despair. So he steps in and he bluntly challenges her, stop wallowing in self-pity and find another way to succeed. Get over yourself and just get out there. Talk about tough love. So the Gauntlet, it's obviously a brutal test. How does it impact on Violet when Aurelie dies in front of her?
I think she's impacted as much as I am, yeah. Especially with the way that it was all set up, Aurelie, I'm not really quite sure how you pronounce it, but she's excited for the Gauntlet, I think, in this chapter. She's I've been practicing my whole life for this. She's super excited for this obstacle course. So then when she dies, everyone's just a bit what just happened? And especially Violet, she's she really gets this sense of I'm starting to build budding friendships here, and then people are dying. She really wants to grieve properly her friends. And we learn early on in the book too that when someone dies, they condemn their souls to Malik and all their belongings are burned. Their lives and their presence is just totally erased from the world.
Yeah,
they're read off a death roll and that's it. So yeah, I think Violet is just really taken aback with how brutal it is. I think Xaden being so blunt with her too. She's just she needs a bit of tough love, especially with Dane coddling her. Yeah, but I
think it also shows she's not yet hardened to the death that faces them daily.
Yeah.
Some of the other cadets just seem to sort of take it in their stride, and they obviously get used to, because every single morning they do the daily roll call of people who have passed away in the last 24 hours. I think it also shows that Violet is not yet hardened by the death that faces everyone daily. A lot of the other cadets, they just seem to take it in their stride. Whereas she, like you said, has to or wants to process every single death individually. And it's a harsh world they live in. Every morning they call out the names of whoever died in the previous day. And yeah, she wants to grieve, and sort of there's no space or time to do it.
Yeah. I think there's like a really good balance between that, right? Like Dane needs to stop coddling her. Xaden's giving her a bit of tough love, but she's trying to find this like happy medium of, no, hang on, I want to grieve my friends. I want to grieve family. I don't believe in sort of erasing everyone's presence as soon as they die. She's sort of finding her own feet and establishing boundaries for herself, and it's really great. I love it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's summarize chapters 1 to 10. So in the first 10 chapters of Fourth Wing, they're filled with action, emotional turmoil, and a deepening relationship between Violet and Xaden. The challenges of the War College and the looming danger of dragon riding set the stage for high stakes and a character-driven story. It's really been non-stop at this point. It is action-packed from the very beginning, and I love it. There was not one moment in the first 10 chapters where I was bored, or, you know, you sort of had that really intense world building that you can sometimes get with fantasy. I was like, hooked.
Yeah, she was
straight away.
Right into it. Agreed.
So Xaden and Violet's relationship is obviously full of tension at this point. How do you feel about the dynamic so far?
I love them. I actually really enjoy that the book is predominantly just from Violet's perspective.
Yeah.
Because I feel I spent so much sort of the first 8 or 9, whatever it is, chapters, just obviously knowing what's going on in her head. But the mystery is all around him. Is he wanting to kill her? Is he ruthless? Is he violent? Is he, like, who is this guy? Like, what's his story? But then to sort of have those sneak peeks, and I think she does the two chapters from Violet's perspective. There's one that we'll come across later. But I love that we just get a little opening into his mind, and then it's back to Violet again for the next however many chapters. So I feel like that really contributes, in my mind, to the tension. Sometimes when you read these sort of romantasy books from both sides, I mean, once you know what they're both thinking, in some ways it loses it a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I loved how it was just mainly from Violet's perspective.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Like, you don't want answers too soon. You need a bit of that mystery, a bit of that angst. And I think if we had Xaden's perspective really early on, it would have really removed that mystery.
And we still have the element of, we don't, apart from knowing that he is obviously attracted to her, we got that glimmer, but we still don't know his story. I think we suspect that they're going to end up lovers rather than enemies. But we don't know what his deal is. We don't know much about the rebellion and the children of the rebellion and how that sort of shapes their mental outlook and their opinion of Navarre. So even though we know there's an attraction there, is it going to blossom and unfold, or is it going to sort of all implode?
Yeah, and he's I think even in his perspective, he's already fighting it, right? Like, he's like, why am I attracted to her? Like, I can't keep my hands off her, that sort of thing. But he's fighting it. He doesn't want to have those feelings. And I think, you know, in real life, if someone's parent was responsible for the death of your parents, you're not exactly wanting a relationship with that person, even though they had nothing to do with it. So
yeah, we'll see what happens next time.
So with that being said, thank you for joining us today, besties, and reviewing chapters 1 to 10 of Fourth Wing. Next week we will be deep diving into chapters 11 to 20, which has some of my favourite scenes in these chapters. So I'm so excited to break it down and revisit some of my favourite moments.
We want to hear from you. If you have any fantasy or romance fantasy gems, drop them in the comments. We love discovering new reads and hearing about what you've been reading. Your suggestions may even be featured in one of our future episodes. Let's build this bookish community together. If you have enjoyed hanging out with us, make sure you hit the subscribe button, give us a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below. We are excited to hear your thoughts and what books you're reading.
Thanks for hanging out with us today, besties. We hope you have an amazing rest of the week filled with great reads and good vibes. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.